anything about the people about to come to stage, they are rebels, and so I cannot guarantee they're going to stick to the time, but I'm going to try to reel them in. My name is Christina. I am here because of Emile Najjar, who I'm going to call out. She's a board member, and what happens when you're friends with her is she invites you to an event, and the next thing you know, you're standing on stage when you had no plans of being there. So it's an honor to be in your midst. I've worked with Children of War Foundation in the Middle East a lot, and I'm very passionate about these issues. And as a storyteller, that is the number one way, in my opinion, that you can affect change. And so being here, having these conversations, bringing these leaders in the community to stage is going to be very important. So I'm looking forward to it. Emile Haddad really needs no introduction. He told me that his experience in Lebanon and war-torn Lebanon is really a big part of what shaped him, what's inspired him, why he's here today to have this discussion. He came to America when he was 28. Where's his wife of 37 years? Is she in the audience? God bless you. And his kids are here too, I think. Give him a round of applause. All right, we're going to have a fun discussion. This is going to set the tone for what today's about, what they hope that you get from this. And without further ado, Emile, will you come to stage?
We met in the hallway, and she didn't know what she was getting herself into. Nothing that you're going to see right now was in the plan, so we just decided to change it all. So the first session is supposed to be two rebels, probably a good description. Let me just say what I'm going to do here. We picked a title. Where is it? Yeah, here. And I always say to people that we very quickly jump into the what and the how, and we forget to explain the why behind them. So I'm here to explain the why behind the title and why we chose the title. And I'm going to actually do it in Arabic by starting from the right to the left with embracing change first before I get to sharing the stage. So I mean, one of the quotes that we all have heard over and over and over again is the only constant in life is change. And we all have heard it. But I think what I found interesting is that quote was actually coined 2,700 years ago. So 2,700 years ago, somebody said the only constant in life is change. And yet, we live today in times when we're seeing some of the biggest change in human history, and people are not listening to the quote. And the reason why is because change is scary. You know, nobody likes change. I mean, we're very comfortable in status quo, and there are three ways that people deal with change. You either deny it, you fight it, or you embrace it. And if you choose to go the first two, then most probably you're going to end up like Blockbusters, or Kodak, or Polaroid. That's what happens. And that's really why we chose this, in order for us to really explain why embracing change is the right path for us to go. Now, I'm going to touch on a few things that I think are going to just obvious, but highlighting the change we're seeing. There's two types of change that happens gradually, and change that we prepare for. You know, we all know our kids are going to graduate, hopefully one day, and go get married, and this is change in life. That we react to it emotionally, although we prepared for it for our lives. You know, I cry every time something happens. I know it's happening, but I cry because it's emotional, because it's a change, it's a shift from something I'm very comfortable with. Now, the change I'm talking about today is not that. It is the biggest disruption in human history. That's the time we're living in right now. We are witnessing the fourth revolution and the biggest in history. And it's happening as we speak. And I'm going to give some examples. Let's look at what technology is doing. Artificial intelligence, which we're going to cover today. You know, ChatGPT today is passing bar exams, is writing books, and is actually writing business plans. That's what this machine that we're teaching to be more intelligent ultimately than us is happening. For people who remember Odyssey 2020, that was a fiction movie, but now it's reality. You look at today blockchain, and what that is doing, all the way from currency disruption to authentication to actually going all the way today to election fraud. You look today at robotics. It's no more the image of Ford and robots building cars. We're in times when somebody who's sitting at the Mayo Clinic is going to be doing surgery on somebody who's sitting in India. That's what robotics is doing right now. You look at what is happening in the area of data collection. We have something called gadgets that we wear today. It's monitoring us in real time and collecting our data. And that data is now accelerating a lot of research. And we're going to end up all being catered to in a customized way. The one-size-fits-all is gone. So when you look at all of that, when you look at 3D printing today, and the fact that we are now at a time when we can print all the way from a handle of a door that's broken to a full home that is being built in 3D printing to ultimately human organs, that's going to change everything. I don't know what Home Depot is going to be if ultimately we can, print every part of our homes at home and don't need to go back to Home Depot. When you look at geopolitics and what's happening today, when you look at Ukraine, which is a very sad war, but Ukraine is more than a war. Ukraine is a redistribution of energy that is happening in Europe right now. That's going to change the dynamic of that whole part of the world and where the centers of gravity come from. Anybody who thinks that Western Europe is going to still be dependent on Russia or the East for oil and natural gas is making a mistake. But they need it. So where are you going to get it from? I have the answer. It's going to come from the Mediterranean natural gas and oil-producing countries. And that's why today you see the changes that are happening in that part of the world. That's why you see today a conflict that has been going on since 1948 somehow being diffused, because everybody realizes that that conflict has been an obstacle in the way of the progress of an area. That is how significant that is. The whole thing that we've been hearing about China and Russia and how that's now becoming a partnership is taking us away from 30 years of globalization to a new era of regionalization. But the interesting part, if you listen to it, it's not iron curtains anymore, because you can't just simply put the curtains up, because the supply chain today is dependent. You cannot totally be independent of China. So somehow we have to find a way to create a chain link fence that allows some things to go back and forth, but to still have boundaries. And I can go on what that all means for a long time. But make no mistake, that's going to give birth to new powers, the same way the Industrial Revolution gave birth to cities like New York and Manchester City and places that became the centers of manufacturers and commerce. Now you look at the social side of the equation. I woke up this morning and the headline, unfortunately, was more than 50 people died in a crash of a boat of migrants going to Italy. That's the story we hear every day. That is a bigger story than just a crash, as sad as it is. Because when you look at Africa and the fact that Africa is growing by the size of China, 1.2 billion over 20 years, and when you look at Europe and it has a shrinkage of population that's sucking all that over there, that is actually changing demographics dramatically. In 2018, I was in France when France won the World Cup. And the headline in one of the newspapers said, "Congratulations to Africa." Because all the players on the team were African immigrants. Now, that's good for workforce, for Germany, for France, but it's also creating some of the challenges where you see the rise of neo-Nazis again, and fascism, where people are pushing back on that, saying, wait, they're taking my job. We saw it here. That's going to be something that is going to also create a change. You see today places, I just came back from Riyadh, and an associate of mine, Lynn, here, and I and our kids were together. What's happening in Saudi Arabia right now, in that part of the world, in terms of social reform, is amazing. It's changing the whole dynamic of a relationship, gender relationship over there.
Emile, you told me to interrupt you, so I'm going to listen to you.
I absolutely.
We're halfway done, and Khaled needs to come up and set the tone for today if we want to get into that conversation as well.
But I didn't say insult me. I said
insult me. He's like, we're going to have fun. You interrupt me.
Okay, so, all right, look.
I'm just trying to keep the time.
I'm going to go share the stage. I'm going to share the stage. By the way, I'm not going to say, he's going to speak for the rest of it. So that was the first part. The sharing the stage very quickly is, we're all seeing echo changes. Everybody wants to listen to their favorite news station that wants to tell them about what they want to believe. I go to every time we talk about gender inequality, and it's basically ladies talking to ladies. We want the young generation to participate, but we put them in and talk at them as if they're still in class. So we want to share the share the stage with everyone. That's the only way we're going to get to advance and stop the silos that have actually created a lot of polarization in the world. So I can't think of a better person to share the stage with me to disrupt this program from the beginning than Khaled Janahi. And he's going to come up, and I'm going to ask him a question, and he's going to go from there. We have not at all coordinated. We don't know what we're talking about, so just come up. Yeah, I'm going to put you next to the nice lady.
Two glasses.
Yeah.
Also, Medal of Honor recipient, which I failed to mention. It's very impressive. Impressive company up here.
They needed to meet the quota.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Thoughts on what he just shared?
Well, I don't think you insulted him enough.
Okay, I'm going to work on that.
He just left me with 2 minutes to talk, so very good. Just a question before I start. All those who are under the age of 35, put your hands up. I'm talking to you guys only, because the rest of you will not accept true disruption. You talk about disruption, you talk about change, but you will not accept it. The young, from what my experience, especially in the past 4 years, because I've been working with the young, a couple of universities in England in terms of working on the leadership aspects and what are the attributes of leadership, attributes of change into the future. And I found actually that the young, the undergrads, are the ones that I've got the best benefit from in the discussion, was the postgrads, mostly in their 30s and above. They are very much reserved to see the status quo change, because when we talk about change, you have to accept that the status quo cannot carry on being the way it is in all aspects. Now, we lose business if we have an issue with status quo, because the people that we're doing business with, we are worried, so we have to be politically correct. I mean, those words I've been hearing since I was young, be politically correct. Sharing the stage, matter of fact, I would like the under 35s to be happier, and they ask us to share the stage with them, because they are embracing change, as Emile was alluding to, in a much faster, I mean, not just faster, I mean, I'm talking about quadruple faster than the rest of us. In the corridor, Emile was talking, he wished, because he's going to be 65 in June, he wished that he was 30 years younger, because the next 30 years are going to be wonderful. Unlucky for him, I'm 64, age-wise, but my art still is 20. So I've got another 60 years to go. So any change happens. I love change. I love disruption. I mean, OpenAI is great. ChatGPT, I even tried it. My wife doesn't know, she's sitting here. I actually the first thing I did, open basically ChatGPT, I tried to do a poem for her birthday. And I went back and forth, and then the final thing when I read it, I thought I was reading Playboy, so I canceled it. You know, so it has, things have changed. I mean, things are happening so fast now in front of us. It's unbelievable. So the other word here is leadership. I think leadership, before you expect others to embrace change, leadership has to be happy to change. You cannot ask for the people, whether it's in the office, whether it's at home, whether it is at government level, government to people, that people should accept change before you do. So a true leader is a leader who's got an open mind, a leader who basically, he encourages change where he starts with himself first before he asks everybody else. Now that leader could be in a dictatorship and it could be in a democracy. It does not mean that you're democratic, that you're a good leader. And it does not mean, if you are basically in a dictatorship, to be a bad person in that rulership perspective.
Well, it was interesting. You said the greatest leader you know is who? Your mother.
She is number one. My wife is number two. So after the, okay.
I don't know if she likes it.
No, actually, the four leaders that I've known very well, and I'm embarked on writing something, and hopefully it's going to be out where...
He has a new book.
Yeah. And
got to tell us the title.
Yeah, it's... actually, the title is very worrisome, but it is more what's inside the book. Okay? It's all about going from rulership to leadership. And it's like brief memoir of an nonconformist, because I see everybody knows. My wife doesn't know what's in the book. My sons don't know what's in the book. The only ones who know are the editors and the legal editors. It was interesting, the legal editor came back to me and said, oh, by the way, the only persons who can take you to court are your father and your grandfathers, two grandfathers. And the reason is because I deposited the three of them to be rulers of the household, whilst their wives were actually the real leaders of the household. Now, talking about gender in Saudi Arabia and elsewhere, equality, I think that is part of disruption, but accepting change, okay, I see cultural revolution in that part of the world. It's a big cultural revolution. But that cultural revolution is just a starting point for real equal aspects.
Can I ask you a question on that? See, leadership is not incentivized to change unless there's a reason for leadership to change. And I think what I'm seeing right now, and what at least my assessment about what's happening in that part of the world, is change didn't come because some leader woke up and said, I think we need to change. I think that people started realizing that the tidal wave of young generation with social media and information and all of that is going to ultimately take over the old way of thinking. And I think change, in my opinion, Khaled, starts organically from the bottom. You have to build pressure. Today we live in a democracy, and what we've seen in COVID is how messy democracy could be. Because you're not going to force me to wear a mask, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. But ultimately, people who are in elected office are going to do what's going to get them elected again, or what's going to keep them popular as dictator, and that's only going to come from the pressure from the bottom up. So what would you say to the young generation?
No, what I say to the young generation, don't do what I did, okay? Do what you think is right. And what is right is actually to stand by your point and never start, political correctness, which is the thing that we all hide behind. I'm talking about the 35-year-olds and above now. I'm not talking about the younger ones. We hide behind that because of our business interests, because of whatever interests or political positioning or whatever. I think if you are young, you should basically have your own, you have to own the agency to the change that you want. You have to push for it, you have to raise it. Now, raising issues, it does not mean go above the red line, because there are red lines everywhere, okay? But you have to go to the red line, and you have to manage pushing one step at a time. I remember back in 2011, in Dead Sea, it was during the World Economic Forum meeting at the Dead Sea, King Abdullah of Jordan stood up, and it was post so-called Arab Spring, and he said, and the speech was beautifully written by someone in Washington, one of those houses, but it said like, we don't believe in revolution, we believe in evolution, which I totally personally go for, and I think the young should push for that. So the young, there is much more pressure on the young with all the changes happening in OpenAI and the rest of technological advancement, which what you talk about, the changes happening in the revolution. I think 5th and 6th and 7th revolution is going to happen so fast because of that, because the way things are moving, is that the young can't afford to sit on status quo. They have to push for it. What I worry about is in certain parts of the world, unfortunately, because there has been devolution rather than evolution of change, because if I ask King Abdullah, okay, how much have you changed from 2011 to today, it's going to be very difficult to see things really going positive. Maybe certain aspect positive, but majority things appear negative. I'm not talking just about Jordan, I'm talking about across that part of the world and the rest of the world. So it's not a question of democracy. I mean, let me just give you a very good example that we all know, Singapore. He was a great leader. Lee Kuan Yew, what he did, he was a great leader, and that's what we see. A country which was a third world country today is part of the developed world, actually one of the best parts of the developed world. So it's not a question, I mean, people in our part of the world, they are always scared about this democracy and dictatorship. I don't care if somebody has been born into position of leadership because he's born, he's whatever, and he's put there, as long as he's a leader. The thing is, you can have an elected person who's not a true leader, he's more of a ruler. But what I want to see is the character of the individual being there, doing things. And that brings you back, who pushes that for it to happen is the young. So the young have to push up. It's not going to be easy.
Don't you
as
think
time passes, it's going to be much more difficult.
we're running out of time, so I have two more.
No, wait a second.
Quick
We're not
questions.
running. No. He's in charge.
I know, I told you, they're rebels.
We ignore time.
So you talk a lot about the youth, which of course are important, and things are changing exponentially, like you said. But don't you think that there is value in the collaboration between the plus 35 and the younger than 35, because those who do not know their history are doomed to repeat it?
Well, look, I think that's an excuse for us to be involved. I come back to what to what I started with. It's for the young to decide whether they want us to share the stage with them or not. It's not for us to dictate to them that we should share stage with them. It's their decision.
Can I answer that?
Yeah.
I think we're making a mistake by defining old and young by age. I know a lot of people who are, 64, who are younger than 30 years old. I think that it's a matter of where do you fall on the spectrum of the change? Are you now part of the future, regardless of how old you are, or you're going to be part of the past? And I can tell you, I know a lot of people who are not our age, who are so much hanging on to what they believe is, is comfortable. So I don't know that I want to talk about it in age. I mean, I really don't. I can easily sit there and do nothing. And I'm shopping back and forth all over the world. Not because I need to build a business, because I want to be part of that change for as long as I have the energy to be part of that change.
So it's a willingness to embrace the discomfort.
100%, yeah. I used to tell everybody in my office, and people here who work with me will tell you, I used to say, I need you to do me one favor. Every time you walk into a meeting, I want you to leave all your successes at the door, because they mean nothing going forward. So I think that's really, it's more the attitude and the willingness than it is the age.
Yeah, I agree. As a plus 35 recently, I agree. Any final thoughts before we share the stage with others?
Well, they gave us 3 minutes.
I know, we have 3 extra minutes.
So,
I know you guys are going to go over that.
That's for me.
What do you hope is the number one thing people walk away from today with?
I think I'm going to go to what he said. Look, we worked very hard on this program, and I think it's going to be a very good program. But I think we ourselves fell into the trap of having most of the people be people who have some experience in Qatar. I would have loved to have, and I might today disrupt and call on some young people who I know who they are, to come and tell us what they're up to, because we need to have young people. We need to listen to the future. I used to spend all my time in the office where we had internship. They will lose me and I'll be with the interns, because I used to say, so I think that if you're asking me, I think what I'm hoping I can get from this is, an interest from the younger people. So next year when we have TAKminds, it'll be 75% of the people will be under 30 or under 35, and 25% is us. I want to be in the audience, listen to them.
This is great. The way, as Emile was saying, the program has been done extremely well. Been very hard work behind that. But I think come next year, I think what's going to happen is going to be a revolution, the word that people don't like, a revolution in the mindset. It's all about basically changing the youth mindset into the future. And for me, one thing I want to get out of this, coming back to the 35s and below, is actually their they should not be worried about raising issues, because critical thinking, and a lot of us in my part of the world, critical thinking for them is basically, oh, you are judging things. No, critical thinking is actually thinking outside the box big time. And you think positively and negatively, and any question, you can raise any question you want, regardless what it is. And you should not worry about, oh, this is going to upset this person or that person. By definition, we're not raising questions because somebody's going to get upset. You are not really interested in evolving and changing the status quo. I think the status quo has to change, and it will change big time because of the technology. And the social change is happening because of the way the world is. I mean, I remember, I will tell you a story, which is everybody knows. I don't trust news.
What?
Okay? I don't trust. No, let me
Only
tell you.
Fox.
I'll tell you why. Because I was brought up, okay, on the news, which basically whatever you hear, because in my day, because I'm not, here's 20, but I'm 64. So when I was young, we didn't have live TV, we didn't have all that. So basically the news was the radio, mostly. And I remember during the 6-day war, for 6 days, I thought
we were winning.
We were winning big time. Tel Aviv is gone, everything
Absolutely.
is gone. And I remember even the name of the individual, and it was one radio channel which was called Sawt al-Arab min al-Qahira. Okay, and I remember the guy Ahmed Saeed, God bless his soul, that I remember his voice. And it only took another 4 days when Nasser came out and said that they lost the war. So for me, from that moment onwards,
you lost trust.
Any news for me is basically state news,
well,
whether it is private or public. By the way, including this country. I mean, it's the way I see it, it's all about pushing the agenda. But the social media and the change in technology and what it's done, it has changed all that. So it makes you ask questions. That's why when Emile says, I would like to go back 30 years, I think it's basically enjoying this change which is happening and raising issues. I mean, I get best news, and I question it, of course, mostly from my part of the world through the social media. But of course, you have to ask. And I differentiate between fake news and false news.
Yeah.
Fake news, I leave it for you guys here, because you talk about it. But false news is what worries me, when you give wrong information, okay, rather than...
Well, that's a whole other conference that we could get into with media. So focusing on today, the ability to ask questions, and you have to be brave to do that. That's a great point you made, and getting out of our silos.
I'm going to say that one of the things I think we're hoping for. We're hoping that what we get out of this is a living process that actually engages people so we can take ideas and turn them into reality. We can actually use this as a forum, not to come and just give a couple of talks and leave. That's what we were talking about, and Ricardo and the board last night, we talked about all of that. And I think that the time is now for us to use a forum like this to start engaging and incubating and accelerating.
I mean, people actually, I want to end up with this. I mean, I didn't say anything about not being a typical Arab with a Persian mindset and changing it to English. I mean, everybody, if they started saying how wonderful last night was, how wonderful Ricardo is. For me, actually, Ricardo, for accepting someone like me to be on stage, that actually is courage. Okay? I mean, that's big time courage, because, I mean, for me to share, I'm only sharing 10% of my views, okay? And specifically because Ricardo told me, okay, keep the 90% because I want to carry on coming here. So I said, fine, I will do that. But I would like to give credit to Ricardo, not because of anything, because I think actually he's done something that a lot of people in his position in that business will be totally scared of, because they can make millions by doing it the other way rather than doing it the right way. So I basically applaud him for that.
Great job, you guys.
Well,
We're at time.
I'm
going to shuffle you off the stage.
If Ricardo is courageous, I'm sitting here looking for snipers on the window.